My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. A male, 28 years old, comes from a family with a convoluted and long history of favoritism. My younger sister, Amy, 25, has always been preferred by my parents, especially Dad, over me. Starting in our childhood, this partiality only got worse as we grew up. Amy was the golden child from my earliest memories. Our parents threw her an elaborate birthday party, including professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and a petting zoo when I was 5 and she was 2. I had a store-bought cake and a little family supper for my birthday that same year. This helped to define the tone for years to come. The differences became clearer as we aged. Amy always received the newest toys, the greatest clothes, and most attention. I recall saving months of allowance for a new bike when I was 10 years old. Amy wanted one too, hence she had a fit when she saw it. Rather than educating her about waiting or saving, my parents went right out and got her an even nicer bike than mine. Another arena where the bias was evident was school. Amy's parents attended all of her school functions, while they usually missed mine. I took center stage in the school play in 4th grade. I practiced for weeks, driven by great enthusiasm. My parents arrived an hour late on the night of the play, therefore missing my major scene. They were consoling Amy after she complained of a stomach ache. She was fine later on, they had simply lost count of time playing with her. Regarding academics, nothing I ever did seemed sufficient. I joined the math club, often received straight A's in middle school, and even took first place in a regional science fair. My parents hardly noticed these successes. They gave Amy a celebratory dinner and purchased her a new phone as encouragement to keep getting better when she scored a B+ on one test in her weakest subject. High school was particularly difficult. With an eye toward their approval, I put myself into whatever activity I could. Along with keeping a 4.0 GPA, I was editor of the school newspaper and debate team captain. Amy coasted through school, hardly keeping a C average, and spent much of her time hanging out with friends. I was chosen from our university as one of 2 junior year applicants to participate in a famous summer program at Harvard. It was such an honor, and I felt great. My dad grumbled and moved the topic to Amy's forthcoming dance performance when I told the news over supper. At least my mother remarked, "That's nice," but she moved on fast. My parents couldn't bring me to the airport the night Amy's concert fell on the same day I was leaving for Harvard, as they wanted to see Amy perform. I asked the parents of a friend for a ride. Another agonizing experience was the college application process. I worked for months on improving my essays, engaged in extracurricular activities, and prepared extensively. Several elite colleges accepted me, and I was given a sizable scholarship to my ideal college. When I told my parents about this at supper, their reaction was barely passable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. College isn't everything," my dad advised. "Just remember us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mother said. On the other hand, my parents were quite understanding when Amy barely passed high school and chose not to attend college. They admired her for knowing herself and for defying social expectations, something they never did for me. They even paid for her a car as a graduation gift. Emotionally, this persistent favoritism impacted me greatly. Over my teens and early 20s, I battled anxiety and despair. Beginning therapy in college, I came to realize that my parents' actions were not my fault. Years of effort were needed to develop my self-esteem and learn to validate myself rather than depending on my parents' approval. Despite my immediate family's lack of support, I still managed to lead a decent life. By the time I finished college with honors, I had a decent job in finance and even purchased my own house by the age of 27. Though my parents aren't proud, I am glad for what I've accomplished. Here, then, is where the current drama begins. On Dad's side, my grandfather died not too long ago. He left a sizable estate and was a successful businessman who started from nothing. In his will, he split his possessions equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, Dad and his siblings. My portion of the bequest was significant, roughly $500,000. It would have allowed me to invest in my future, pay off my education loans, and perhaps even launch my own company someday. This unanticipated windfall and the opportunities it presented made me happy. When the will was read, though, my parents clearly became agitated. Later, they drew me aside and told me they felt it was unjust that I received an equal portion. Amy, who lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, said she needed the money more since she was suffering. Though stunned, I attempted to keep cool. I clarified that Grandpa made this decision and that they had no say in how he decided. They insisted I should act morally and give Amy my fair share. They became enraged when I refused and began guilt-tripping me, calling me unappreciative and selfish. Every incident my dad could recall where they had helped me was brought up. Though I worked part-time to help with finances, he emphasized paying for my medically necessary braces, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and allowing me to reside at home during college. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the many shopping sprees, and the fact that they still support her at 25. The matter got rapidly more serious. Acting as the will's executor, my dad chose to handle things himself. Along with her own inheritance, he declared he would be interpreting Grandpa's intentions and giving Amy my entire portion. He claimed this is what Grandpa would have wished if he had known our unique situation. I was broken. This was not only obviously illegal but also a terrible reminder of how little my parents thought of me. Pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our circumstances, I tried to reason with them. Then my mother accused me of speaking ill of the deceased by implying Grandpa would have preferred anything else than what my dad was advocating. I mentioned certain memories of Grandpa supporting my academic and career goals, but my parents brushed these off as misinterpretations. They said Grandpa wanted to make sure Amy was taken care of and had privately voiced worry about her future. They had no response when I asked why he hadn't simply penned the will that way. Then Amy, for her part, was awkward about the circumstances but did not voice criticism of our parents. She merely shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." When I tried to chat with her alone, she obviously wasn't going to be much help. Feeling misled and wounded, I asked Grandpa's widow, my paternal grandma, for guidance. Hearing what was happening, she became enraged. She informed me that my parents had no authority to alter the will and that this was exactly not what Grandpa had planned. Grandma sent me some materials that clarified the matter. Several years ago, apparently, my parents asked Grandpa to give everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had steadfastly objected, saying he thought all of his grandchildren should be treated equally. He had even included a stipulation in his will declaring that anyone challenging the equitable distribution would lose their portion. Equipped with this knowledge, I challenged my parents. Grandma's disclosure of their earlier attempt to effect the will startled them. They claimed they were only looking out for Amy's future. My dad tried to defend it, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandma acted right away. She got in touch with the will's other executor and attorney. She also contacted my dad's siblings, who shared her equally strong indignation at what he was attempting. Taken together, they stopped my dad's scheme and guaranteed that the will would be carried out as stated. Though they are unhappy with me, my parents were obliged to back off. They argued I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others and accused me of turning the family against me. My mother sobbed about how I had split the family and deceived them. I said I had never expected anything from them anyway. When my dad threatened to cut me out of their will entirely now that I had accepted the inheritance, they began threatening to break off all communication. My dad even went so far as to suggest I would not be welcome in their house should I inherit it. In a particularly low blow, my mother remarked that my acceptance of the money revealed I never truly loved them and was merely ready to profit from their passing. The matter split the extended family. A few of my cousins were encouraging since they understood the long-standing favoritism and valued me for advocating for myself. Others believed I should have yielded in order to preserve peace, arguing that family harmony comes first over financial considerations. Although my dad's siblings were definitely on my side, this strained their relationship with my parents as well. Amy found herself enmeshed in all of this. She confided in me privately that, although she felt bad and didn't ask for this, she wasn't ready to challenge our parents. She's been trained her whole life to depend on them and seek their praise. Hence, I don't blame her entirely. Still, a part of me longs for her to help me just once. This circumstance brought out a lot of past suffering and bitterness. I found myself remembering all the times I was passed over or discounted in favor of Amy, the birthday celebrations I missed, the school functions my parents missed, the successes that went unreported. This one occurrence seemed to bring to a head a lifetime of unfairness. Though the whole affair caused a great divide in the family, I am standing my ground and intend to take my inheritance as Grandpa meant. My parents hardly talk to me now, and family get-togethers have grown awkward. I missed our monthly family meal last week for the first time ever because I couldn't stand the cold shoulders and accusing glares. Though there is turmoil, a tiny part of me feels empowered. I'm confronting the unfair treatment by my parents for the first time in my life. I'm declaring my value and refusing to be written off. It's both terrible and freeing at once. Though I believe I'm in the right, the family drama is draining me, something I haven't experienced since college. I've started having anxiety attacks again. To handle all this stress, I'm thinking about returning to therapy. Am I the one who should have refused to comply with my parents' expectations and accepted my inheritance? Should I have simply handed Amy the money to maintain peace? Although I'm tired of being the family scapegoat, I also fear losing my family entirely. Any guidance or viewpoints would be much appreciated. Update: since my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and guidance. It truly kept me strong during trying circumstances. Let me start with the legal aspect of things. Many of you advised me, and I did see my own attorney. He verified that I had every right to inherit and that what my dad attempted was, in fact, illegal. He helped me document everything and prepare to act legally if needed. Fortunately, things didn't transpire as such. Along with my dad's siblings, my grandma and her attorney worked out matters without involving court. I got my full inheritance, and the will was carried out exactly as intended. Because of his attempts to manipulate the will, my dad was removed as an executor. This was a somewhat demanding process spanning several weeks. My parents threatened litigation, there were tense meetings and furious phone calls, but ultimately, the law was unambiguous, and they had to back off. Still ongoing, though, is the family fallout. At first, my parents doubled down on their viewpoint. They accused me of being avaricious and neglectful of my sister. They also tried to mobilize other family members against me, spreading allegations that I had somehow coerced Grandpa into giving me money. Luckily, most of the family saw through their trickery. About a month after the will's acceptance, there was one particularly unpleasant incident at a family gathering. My parents showed up unannounced. My aunt was hosting and hadn't invited them to come. They started a scene, shouting about how I had taken from Amy and corrupted Grandma against her. My dad went on about how I had ruined all these wonderful memories. My mother flung an old photo album squarely at my feet. It was awkward and terrible. It took several relatives to cool things down and persuade my parents to leave. Bless her heart, my grandmother turned out to be my most powerful supporter throughout all of this. She shared stories of how my grandfather had always been proud of my achievements and how he especially wanted to make sure all his grandchildren had equal chances. She even revealed that Grandpa had kept a scrapbook of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from the university play my parents had been late for. This insight was sad as well as wonderful. Grandma also volunteered to set the record straight with the wider family. She organized a family gathering, excluding my parents, and laid out the entire history of my parents' partiality. She included events I had long forgotten or never even heard about. Having someone finally recognize the unfairness I had endured for years was vindicating, but it also reopened old scars. About my sister, Amy, she eventually found her voice in all of this. She came to me personally and apologized for not standing up for me earlier. After some soul-searching and several long talks with our grandmother, she said she thought our parents' favoritism was improper but admitted she had been too afraid to confront it. We discussed our childhood in great detail and with emotional intensity. Amy admitted that being the favorite child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She explained that she never learned how to stand on her own 2 feet and felt immense pressure to live up to our parents' expectations. She told stories of times she yearned to accomplish things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and handle everything for her, depriving her of the opportunity to develop and learn from her mistakes. For our relationship, this talk marked a turning point. We began to mend the sibling bond that our parents' favoritism had broken. Amy shocked everyone by declaring that she was going to use her inheritance to pay for college. She said seeing me stand up for myself had inspired her to start taking charge of her own life. She decided what she wanted to study, registered at a nearby community college, and planned to transfer to a 4-year university. Our parents were stunned. I think they knew, deep down, that their babying had not done Amy any favors. The response of my parents to all this has been varied and ever-changing. At first, they angrily attacked both of us. They tried to guilt Amy into quitting college to help the family, claiming I had turned her against them. When that didn't work, they changed their strategy. After several long talks with my grandmother and seeing Amy's transformation, my mother began to recognize how damaging their actions had been. She made some hesitant moves toward reconciliation, even beginning therapy to address her issues. She reached out to apologize, owning up to her unfairness and requesting a chance to make things right. It's a slow process, and while I'm cautiously hopeful, I'm also maintaining strong boundaries. Sadly, my dad has been less willing to acknowledge his mistakes. He's still furious and feels like the victim in all of this. He's been cold toward Amy since she chose to go to college and hardly speaks to me. He's tried a few times to exert control, even threatening to sell our childhood home if we don't come to our senses. Though Amy and I are standing strong, it hurts to see him distance himself from both of his children. The dynamics within the extended family have changed dramatically. I now live closer to my dad's siblings, who have been incredibly supportive. Grandma has been my rock, sharing more stories about Grandpa and his pride in us for standing up for ourselves. Her support and wisdom have been invaluable, as has her role as a mediator in family conflicts. This whole process has taught me a lot about the true meaning of family. I've realized that sometimes, the family you choose can be more supportive than the one you were born into. Along the way, I've developed a close-knit circle of friends and grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting boundaries and practicing self-care have become crucial to me. I'm learning to say no to situations that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel guilty about prioritizing my well-being. I was so consumed with trying to win my parents' approval that I had neglected exploring my own interests and hobbies. To those in similar circumstances, I would advise not letting anyone make you feel bad about claiming what is rightfully yours, even if it creates controversy. It's okay to stand up for yourself. Though family dynamics can be complex, you deserve fair treatment. Remember, it's never too late to start building the life you deserve. Seek therapy if needed, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't hesitate to set boundaries. Your worth isn't determined by how your family treats you. I want to thank everyone again for your advice and encouragement. It meant more than you'll ever know during this challenging time. Although the journey hasn't been easy, I'm excited about the future and confident in myself in a way I haven't been in years. I'm eager to see where this new chapter of my life will lead, and I'm determined to break the cycle of favoritism and build healthier relationships in my own future family.